Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devin Wills. I'm Associate General Counsel with the Texas Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending. Up here with me are Audrey Spalding, Ginger Harmon, and Matt Nance with the Office of the Consumer Credit Commissioner, and Jesse Moore from Department of Banking. We'd like to thank you all for coming here and both tuning into our webinar online. We really appreciate the input that you provided and will be providing in this process. We're here today for the quadrennial review of 7 Texas Admin Code, Chapter 155, dealing with payoff statements. I'll now turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit about the webinar.
Sure, thanks, Devin, and thank you everyone for coming in person and listening online. In addition to our in-person meeting here in Austin, we're also holding a webinar that you can use to listen or participate online. Some of you may be listening through a computer, some on your phones through an app, some may be doing both. For those of you listening on a computer, there's a chat function that you can use to enter questions. Our legal assistant, Ginger, will be looking at those. You can type those in at any time, and we'll get to those questions. There's also other functions you can use through the webinar. We'll also be posting audio of this meeting, audio of the webinar online on the OCCC's rules page as soon as we're able to after the meeting wraps up. So again, thank you everyone for coming and listening online. And with that, I'll turn it back to Devin.
Okay, so we are, thank you, Matt. Again, we're discussing 7 Texas Admin Code, Chapter 155, dealing with payoff statements. These are the rules and forms required and promulgated by the Finance Commission under Texas Finance Code Section 343.106. That's found on the second page of the handout. These are basically requests from title insurance companies for payoff info from mortgage servicers, and they require to use required forms or substantially similar forms. The last 4 pages of the handout are the 2 different versions of the forms. The 3 finance agencies met and discussed, well, I guess essentially the quadrennial review requires us to, every 4 years, review our rules. So that's what we're doing here. The 3 agencies met and discussed them. We noticed there was a discrepancy between the forms as they appear on SML's website. Those are on pages 5 and 6. As well as the form as it appears on the Texas Register, which is pages 7 and 8. The main difference, you notice the version that's on SML's website has white lettering on the black bars on both pages, loan information, amount due, and where to submit payoff funds. Whereas the version on the Texas Register just has black bars without any lettering. It was our hope is to be able to fix this so that there was one, hopefully one, and hopefully the one with the title. Beyond that change, though, we didn't see a need for any other changes at this time, but we did want to get input from our stakeholders to see how the forms and the rules are working for you, and if you had any input. We sent out 3 questions in our notice. It was, and that's the first page of the handout. Which version are you currently using? Whether you have any other changes to either the forms or the rules. And number 3, what cost would you experience if we replace the Texas Register version with the version on our website? So it's with that. And one other thing, it's my understanding the Texas Register doesn't accept fillable forms, and my guess is that's why there's a discrepancy, because the version that's on our website probably didn't work for them. Hopefully that's something we can fix. And so I will now, I guess the comments we did receive, we had one commenter said they used the form on the Texas Register, and 2 commenters said they used the version on SML's website. Those 2 commenters said it would be minimal cost to change to the other form, or change the form in general, and we had one commenter who was generally opposed to the form. So I will open it up for comments or questions if anyone would have any.
Oh, one thing I had to add is that we've got kind of this town hall style where I guess if you want to talk from your seat, that's fine. But if you have kind of longer form comments, if you could come up to the microphone and share those. If you share them from your seat, I'll have to repeat them so that those listening online will be able to hear.
For the record, my name is Karen Neely, and I represent Independent Bankers Association. And you know I'm going to have a comment. We did check with various members to see if they had any insights that they would like to share. And candidly, even though they are banks as opposed to savings banks or mortgage companies, they tended to use the forms from the SML site because they also tend to be working with third parties that are themselves regulated by SML, and so then that's the logical source for them. So that's a factor, a practical factor that you all might not have realized was lurking out there. And then the other thing that we've seen, which is really important, and it's in the rule and it's in the form, is that you have to have this information. It's in the statute. Many of us in the room worked on the statute originally. So there's certain things that are required by the statute, and the form has to have certain items. But you can expand, and you will have optional information in the document, and that's important. But it's also critical to be super clear, as it is right now, that there can be additional information. One of the bankers sent me his form, and it was significantly more expansive because it provided additional helpful information that could be shared with the consumer so that the consumer fully understood the consequences of the payoff, what it meant to them, what they could and couldn't do, et cetera. So I'm not recommending that be added necessarily. However, if you would like some of that sample for the optional information, we'd be happy to provide that. Again, I think it's helpful to the consumer. The object here was to make sure the right information got to the title company, because the title company had to make sure that they were not going to be liable for giving the wrong payoff. So that's not going to change. But the optional information, if you're interested, we'd be happy to share that, which goes a little bit beyond what's already in the form. It is also, in my personal experience as a draft person doing forms, I have to say I like having the description of the item in the black bar or someplace where you can tell what the objective is in that particular segment. And as we always say, those of us that do transactional work, we always have a paragraph in a contract that says, headings are for our convenience and they do not change the form, right? Yes. So we always have that in our transactional documents. Nonetheless, everyone uses headers because they do provide convenience and they do assist people in understanding the document. So I would suggest that the fillable form, A, be kept because there are people that will need to use it, and B, to the extent that it's feasible to provide that kind of additional information, maybe not formatted the same, but that content, the header in the register form, that would be useful to the people that are using the form. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have. Those are just some observations that I got from bankers and from using forms myself.
I know the one idea I had was rather than white lettering on a black background, maybe change to black lettering on a white background, and hopefully that would fix the issue.
Yeah, it might very well with the Texas Register, so that you just have two heavy black bars, and in between the black bars you would have the header in bold type, all caps, and that would work. Again, as a person who drafts forms, we have to think about what actually works in a system. Yes. And that would probably work. It's just a thought.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Hi, nice to see you again, Devin.
Nice to see you too.
For the record, my name is Daniel Hara, owner of Homestar Capital in Bel Air, Texas. I'm here representing the Texas Mortgage Professionals. From my perspective, I operate as a broker. You'll be happy to know I'm learning something new today. Up until about a month ago, I didn't realize there was a promulgated form for payoffs. That's not to say that I'm not using payoff requests. I think it's important for the commission and the other governing bodies here to note and understand from a practical perspective, most of the banks that we deal with when we order payoffs have their specific criteria, protocols, and logistics required. Under some circumstances, they will not allow any payoff to be requested outside of using their particular source. At least that is, not to say that is probably legal. I'm not going to say that they wouldn't allow for this promulgated form. What I am saying is, as a matter of practice, this is what is explained to my processors in my office. So this is the knowledge that is being provided to us. So as a practitioner, we've never used this form for two reasons. One, first of all, I didn't know about it. Two, the banks we order payoffs from tend to be the big ones, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase. We all know who they are. They require their own process to order the payoff. So I just wanted you to know that. Maybe that would help. I do have a question, if I may. I don't know if it will be this kind of meeting, but if I'd like to propose it. Section 155.3 says the time and delivery of payoff statements. It goes on to say that after the 8th day, it is required that they provide a payoff. I can tell you again, as a practitioner, there are many cases, they tend to be the minority, but certainly on an anecdotal basis, many cases where they take up to 2 weeks. And they tell us that, in some cases, they tell us that up front. They said, yeah, that's how long it takes. It turns out to be electronically returned to us. Doesn't say we have physically handwritten payoffs from local banks. Some of them do take 2 weeks. Certainly, they're taking more than 8 days. I don't know if that's a business day or maybe it is a business day. Still tends to take more than a business day in this case. So, just letting you know, anecdotally, this is what we're dealing with out of the industry. So, I think it's important to note that when these forms are being put together and these statutes are being put in place. Okay. Just want to give that feedback to y'all. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
My name is Everett Ives, and I'm with the Association of Texas Mortgage Professionals. I'm not a direct lender. I work with lenders, clients that are lenders. In general, my experience has been that they allow the title companies to request the payoff statements, and they take whatever they're given. And so my first comment would be that I would like to think that the title companies are in this room. And then secondly, many of the computer systems that are used today are not as easy to use or creative to use as what you have at home or maybe even on your desktop. And so you might find that there's a company that would want to program this form into their system that isn't capable of orienting letters to be vertical as opposed to horizontal. And so I can't name one of those companies, but I would suggest that you reach out to some of the software companies that some of these companies are using and find out if the software is capable of doing that. That's the extent of my comment.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments or questions from the webinar?
Not at this time.
Okay.
John Fleming, Texas Association of Texas Mortgage Bankers Association. I would just suggest that you keep in mind the old maxim that one should never confuse change with progress. The fact is that we have heard so little reaction to the use of this form that if you were to go ahead and just extend the rule and form as is, I think it would have met its original objectives. For those of you who may not have been around to understand the provenance of this form, it came out of a legislative session where the title companies were complaining about difficulty getting the payoff statement from large servicers in time so that they could prepare documents and necessary documents to close the transaction. That was the provenance that got us here. And I've not had any interaction with the title companies on this issue. And I assure you that if the title companies were having an issue, we would have heard about it because we deal with them on a regular basis during our legislative session and in between. There might be some opportunities to tweak or nip and tuck here and there, but I would just suggest that absent any real input from the title insurance community that the form is not working for its intended purpose, that carrying forward the existing rule and form would be sufficient and appropriate.
Thank you. Any online comment?
And if anyone has any comments or questions who's on the webinar, and if you're like typing out a really long one, just you can type in a quick message to let us know you're typing something. Oh yes, there's also a raise your hand function if you're listening through the app on your phone or if you're listening on a computer. But yeah, just if you have something longer to type, you can just type in a quick message and let us know. It looks like we don't currently have any questions or comments on the webinar.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add of the people here? Otherwise, I guess we can wrap up, but I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you for your input. We definitely appreciate it, and we will incorporate it as we move forward.